Tyler, Megan, and Chris stood together on the corner of a neighborhood street, laughing loudly as they teamed about Mabel, an elderly woman who lived alone and was known for her wisdom. The three friends, all white teenagers, thought it would be fun to pay her a visit, not realizing how much this choice would change their lives. "Let's go see the old lady," Tyler said with a mischievous grin. "We can bring some snacks and camera. It'll be like going on an adventure." Megan giggled, playing with her hair. "Yeah, we can show everyone at school how brave we are for hanging out with her." Now, Chris agreed, already taking out his phone. "I bet she's got some wild stories. We could even make a viral video." Yeah, their excitement grew as they made plans to visit Mabel, treating her more like an interesting object than a person. Now they felt bold and superior, unaware of how rude their actions really were. When they got to Mabel's house, which was small but well kept with a neat garden, their confidence began to slip a little. Now Tyler knocked on the door holding the camera ready to film. Mabel opened the door with a warm smile, though her eyes looked tired. She was shorter than they thought, with silver hair tied neatly back and her dark skin showing wrinkles from age. "Well, hello there," she greeted them, her voice strong even with her age. "What brings you folks to my door?" The teenagers glanced at each other, their confidence fading in front of Mabel's calm and graceful presence. "We, brought you some snacks," Megan said nervously, handing her a bag of cookies from the store. Mabel's eyes sparkled, knowing exactly what they were up to. "Now, how kind of you. Why don't you come in and we can share the snacks?" As the teens walked inside, they started to feel the weight of their true motives. Mabel's house was full of photos and keepsakes, each one telling a story they hadn't thought about. The room felt warm, but there was a quiet tension as Mabel noticed their fake smiles and uneasy glances. They had no idea this visit would start a journey that would change how they saw the world. Once they settled in her living room, Mabel offered them homemade cookies, the sweet smell filling the air. "These are way better than those store-bought ones," she said with a playful wink, putting the plate on the table. Tyler, Megan, and Chris looked at each other uncertainly as they took the cookies. Now Mabel began talking, her voice gentle but strong. "You know, when I was your age, things were very different around here." The teens listened half-heartedly, whispering and giggling. Now Mabel noticed but just kept on speaking. "We didn't have the same freedoms you have now. Simple things like going to the movies or eating out were difficult for people like me," she said, her eyes distant. Tyler, uneasy, tried to joke. "At least you didn't have to deal with bad movie sequels," he said, nudging Chris. Mabel's gaze turned serious. "Every laugh has a cost. Are you ready to hear the truth?" Now the room fell silent. Megan leaned in. "What do you mean, Miss Mabel?" Mabel took a deep breath. "Let me tell you about segregation. It was about dignity and being treated like a human." As Mabel spoke, the teens forgot their plan to disrupt. They listened closely, drawn into a world that they'd only ever read about. The room shifted from tense to curious, their bones forgotten as Mabel's stories changed their views. Her voice trembled as she recalled a moment from childhood. "I was 8 when I understood what it meant to be different," she said, her eyes distant, the teens leaning in. "It was my first day at an integrated school. Proud in my new dress, I was met with stares. A boy spat at my feet and called me a name. The teacher did nothing." Now Chris squirmed, suddenly thinking of his own grandmother's untold past. Mabel continued, stronger now. "I cried that day, but my mama said, 'Hold your head high. You're paving the way.' I didn't get it then, but I do now." Now Tyler, defensive, spoke up. "But that was a long time ago. Things are different now, right?" Mabel cut him off, her gaze sharp. "Would you feel the same if it were you?" Now the room fell silent. Tyler opened his mouth but said nothing. Megan looked down embarrassed, and Chris finally saw Mabel in a new light. The ticking clock was the only sound as they sat with feelings of discomfort, guilt, and growing understanding. Mabel watched him, her expression softening. She hadn't wanted to shame the kids, just help them see. As her words sank in, she realized this moment might lead to something important. The mood is shifting. Megan quietly asked, "How did you get through it, Miss Mabel?" "Resilience and hope," Mabel replied, "believing things would change even if I didn't see it." Tyler, still confused, asked, "Don't you hate us? White people, I mean." Mabel shook her head no. Hate only creates more hate. I choose to teach and share my story so future generations could do better. Chris finally spoke. I never asked my grandmother about her experiences. She's Asian and I know she faced some discrimination. I feel terrible for not asking. Mabel gently patted his hand. It's never too late, her story matters too. Megan, holding back tears, said, I once laughed at a racist joke. I didn't want to seem uncool. Now I feel ashamed. Recognizing your mistakes is the first step, Mabel said. What matters is what you do next. The teens began opening up, asking questions and sharing their own experiences with prejudice. Chris, feeling connected, said, More people need to hear your story, Miss Mabel. Maybe we could help. Mabel smiled, hopeful. Now that's how change starts, with understanding, empathy, and action. The afternoon turned into a deep conversation that challenged their views and planted seeds of change. When Mabel finished sharing, tears rolled down her cheeks. The teens, once confident, now sat quietly, moved by her pain and strength. Tyler, humbled, spoke up. Miss Mabel, I'm sorry. We thought this was a joke. Your life, your experiences, they matter. Megan nodded, wiping her own tears. How can we help change things and help others understand? Chris suggested, what if we shared Miss Mabel's story? Maybe organize something at school or the community center. Mabel smiled and then shook her head. It's not just my story. It's a story of many who face discrimination. After a pause, Tyler added, what if we created a mural in the neighborhood to show these stories that often get ignored? Megan's eyes lit up. That's a great idea. We could make it a community project. Chris nodded excitedly. We could interview older residents too. It could celebrate diversity and strength. Mabel, with tears and hope in her eyes, said, a mural would be a wonderful way to share these stories. The teens, feeling a new sense of purpose, discussed their idea. What began as a prank had become something deeper, something more meaningful. Tyler asked sincerely, Miss Mabel, would you help us get the stories right? Mabel smiled. I'd be honored. This is how change starts, with understanding, action, and hope. As the sun set, they kept playing and excited. They had arrived as clueless teens, but they left as young activists. In the following weeks, they spent their free time at Mabel's house, working on the mural. Her living room was filled with sketches, paint samples, and old photos. We should use bright, bold colors, Megan suggested, something that grabs attention. Tyler added, we need symbols of strength, maybe a raised fist and a dove. Chris, researching local history, said, we should include landmarks from the civil rights movement, like the old church downtown. Mabel, sitting in her chair, watched the teens with a mix of pride and amusement. Don't forget the everyday moments, she reminded them. It wasn't always about big marches and speeches. Sometimes resistance was just walking down the street with your head held high. The group took her words seriously, adding scenes of daily life alongside the bigger, more dramatic moments. They talked about color choices, how to arrange the mural, and which stories to show. Now, as they worked, the teens began to open up more. Tyler, usually the joker, shared a thoughtful moment. You know, I never really thought about what I do might hurt others. This project is changing how I see things. Megan nodded in agreement. I've started speaking up when my friends make racist jokes. It's hard, but I keep thinking about what Miss Mabel went through. Chris, who'd been quiet, added, I finally talked to my grandmother about her life. She told me things I never knew. It's like I'm seeing my own family history differently now. Mabel listened with a gentle smile. That's the power of stories and empathy. It changes us from the inside out. As the mural design came together, so did the teens' new understanding. They realized that they weren't just creating art, they were becoming part of a larger effort to bring understanding and healing to their community. The day before they were going to start painting, Mabel surprised them with old photos of herself and her friends from when she was young. These might help you show what those times were like, she said, her voice filled with emotion. The teens gathered round, looking at the faces and the faded pictures. For the first time, they saw Mabel not just as an old woman, but as a young girl with big dreams and a lot of determination. It gave their project new meaning, adding a personal touch that would connect with people who saw it. As they finished their plans, there was a feeling of excitement and responsibility. What had started as a silly prank turned into a deep journey of growth and understanding. The mural would be more than just paint on a wall. It would show the power of listening, learning, and taking action. Tyler, Megan, and Chris arrived at the wall ready to start painting with cans and brushes. The bright morning quickly attracted curious neighbors who came to see what was going on. Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly Hispanic woman from down the street, asked, "What's happening here?" With newfound confidence, Tyler replied, "We're creating a mural to tell Miss Mabel's story and highlight our community's history. Would you like to join us?" To their surprise, Mrs. Rodriguez eagerly agreed. "I have stories to share too," she said, picking up a brush. Soon, more people joined the effort. Mr. Kim from the local grocery store brought refreshments and helped with the painting. A group of kids from the nearby school showed up excited to be part of the project. Megan found herself talking about the project to new arrivals, speaking with a passion that she didn't know she had. This mural isn't just about the past. It's about understanding where we come from so we can create a better future together. Chris worked hard on a part of the mural showing the old church. He listened as an elderly man talked about attending civil rights meetings there. "I didn't know our town had such a strong history of activism," Chris said, adding details to the mural based on the old man's stories. As the day went on, the mural started to come together. Bright colors showed scenes of struggle and triumph, with the faces of local heroes, both famous and unknown, emerging from the wall. In the afternoon, Mabel arrived with a neighbor. Her eyes widened as she saw everyone working together, inspired by her story. Tyler helped Miss Mabel to a chair and asked, "Would you be willing to share your story at the mural's unveiling?" Mabel's eyes filled with tears. "I never thought people would want to hear an old woman's story," she said, nodding. "Yes, I'd be honored." As the sun set, the group stepped back to look at their mural. It was a colorful mix of local history, showing both struggles and progress. Chris, with paint on his clothes, said to his friends, "I never thought visiting Miss Mabel would lead to this. We've started something meaningful." Megan, determined, agreed, "And we can't stop here. We need to continue fighting prejudice in our schools and community." Tyler, normally the jokester, spoke seriously. "This project has changed us. Now it's our turn to help others change." As they cleaned up, the group felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose. The mural wasn't just a painting, it was a commitment to promoting understanding and unity in their community. On the day of the mural's unveiling, excitement and nervousness filled the air. The neighborhood was busy with people from all around coming to see the mural. Tyler, Megan, and Chris arrived early, making final touches to it and setting up chairs for the audience. Their hands trembled a bit, realizing the importance of the moment. "I can't believe how many people are here," Megan whispered, looking at the large crowd. Chris swallowed nervously. "What if they don't like it? What if we made a mistake?" Tyler, usually confident, looked uneasy. "We've done our best. That's what matters." The crowd gathered, a mix of ages, ethnicities, and backgrounds, unified by a shared story. Mabel arrived with her neighbor's help. The teens rushed to assist, their nerves easing as they focused on her. "Ready, Miss Mabel?" Tyler asked, guiding her to a seat. Mabel smiled. "I've been ready for this moment for decades." As the ceremony began, the mayor gave a short speech about the teens' efforts. Then Mabel took to the stage, her voice strong. "I speak to you not just as Mabel, but as someone who has witnessed history," she said. The crowd listened, moved by her story of struggle, victory, pain, and hope. The teens watched as people reacted with tears and understanding. Mabel ended with a powerful message. "The mural is more than a look at the past. It's a guide for the future. It urges us to improve, to be better, and to build a community where everyone is respected and valued." The applause was overwhelming. People stood up, touched by Mabel's words and the mural's impact. As the clapping faded, a voice broke through the crowd. A loud voice interrupted. "This is all lies. You're trying to make us feel guilty for things we didn't do." The celebration halted as a middle-aged man, Mr. Lawson, pushed forward, his face red and flushed with anger. The crowd murmured and the teens exchanged nervous looks. "This mural is propaganda," Mr. Lawson shouted. "You're rewriting history." Now tension replaced the celebratory mood. Tyler, Megan, and Chris instinctively moved closer to Mabel.
"You're brainwashing our kids. Why dig up the past?"
Lawson complained. The mayor tried to calm him. "Sir, this is a community event. Let's keep it civil." But Lawson's anger stirred others, and objections started growing louder. Tyler, gathering courage, spoke up. "Mr. Lawson, this is about learning from history so we can move forward and be better." Megan added, "These stories are real. We spoke to people who lived through them." Chris said, "The mural is about hope, not blame." Their words were drowned out by the growing uproar. Now Mabel stood, placing a hand on Tyler's shoulder. "Sir," she said to Lawson, "I live this history. This mural reflects my life and many others in this community." The crowd fell silent. "This isn't about blame," Mabel continued. "It's about remembering the past to build a better future." Her words lingered, challenging the critics. The tension was thick, with both sides stuck in silence. The teens looked at each other, worried that their project had brought up deeper issues than they expected. Just as the tension peaked, a voice unexpectedly broke through the crowd. "Dad, stop." A young woman pushed forward. It was Sarah, Mr. Lawson's daughter and Tyler's mother. The crowd went silent. Tyler whispered, confusion on his face. Sarah faced the crowd, determination and pain in her eyes. "I've never said this publicly, but it's time." She took a deep breath. "I face discrimination because of my skin color. Yes, I'm Mr. Lawson's daughter, but I'm also black." The crowd gasped, and Mr. Lawson looked shaken. Sarah continued, stronger now. "I stayed silent, thinking it was easier. But seeing this mural and hearing Miss Mabel, I realized silence breeds ignorance." She turned to Tyler. "I'm sorry I never shared this with you. I thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong." Tyler hugged his mother, and the crowd watched in silence. Mabel placed her hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Thank you for your courage. Your story shows why this mural matters," Mabel said. Mr. Lawson, confused, asked, "Sarah, why didn't you tell me?" She answered, "Because, Dad, you didn't seem ready to listen. Maybe now you are." The mood shifted. Those opposing the mural now looked uneasy, faced with a real story. Megan and Chris stood by Sarah and Tyler, supporting them. Chris spoke up. "This is what the mural's about, real experience in our community." Megan added, "It's about seeing the stories we've ignored." As tension faded, people approached the mural again, seeing it differently. The mayor stepped forward. "This shows why projects like this matter. They help us face hard truths and grow as a community." Small groups formed, discussing the mural. Tyler, still processing his family's history, turned to Mabel. "Thank you, Miss Mabel. None of this would have happened without you." Mabel smiled. "No, child. Thank you for listening and taking action. This is just the beginning." As the sun set, casting a warm light on the mural, the community stood together, not in perfect harmony, but with a new willingness to listen, learn, and grow.